What's up? Welcome back to Nowstalgia. Dave here with a review of Rebel Moon, the new sci-fi epic film from Zack Snyder, out now on Netflix. Actually, this is Rebel Moon Part 1 of a two-part series. This is Part 1, A Child of Fire. Rebel Moon Part 2 coming April 2024. Zack Snyder back at Netflix after 2021's Army of the Dead, which I actually liked quite a bit. And Snyder seems to have found a home alongside, of course, his wife and producing partner, Deborah Snyder, at Netflix. They seem to be comfortable there. And their latest is Zack's attempt at making his own Star Wars. He had previously pitched a version, an idea he had to Lucasfilm and Disney, and they declined. So he said, fuck it, I'll do it myself. And unfortunately, Rebel Moon, despite seemingly ambitious trappings to it, is big old dud. Honestly, I'm a big sci-fi fan, but Rebel Moon really just comes across as a never-ending series of facsimiles of greater sci-fi works and greater film works in the past. It's also lacking in some of the visual imagination that we've associated with Zack Snyder's style in the past as well. Snyder is his own cinematographer this time around, and I would say that's a negative. This movie does not look too great. There are certain sequences in particular that I think look worse than others. We can highlight those. But overall, this is a really bland film. The story is rote. The world building is very muddy and expository, but also kind of empty. And I just don't think this really comes together at all, despite the fact that it's only at part one. Like, it's not that compelling. And yeah, I think like on its surface, there are things I was looking forward to seeing. I think number one probably for me is the lead, Cora, played by Sofia Boutella. I've been a fan of Boutella for some time. I think she's a really capable action performer. She hasn't had the best roles more often than not, though, unfortunately. But when you see her in stuff like Hotel Artemis or Atomic Blonde, it's like, oh, wow. Like, there's a lot there. Like, she's good. And unfortunately, her character doesn't get a whole lot to do in Rebel Moon as this runaway from this, overarching empire at the center of our galactic story here, the Mother World, as we're told. And she has this. She realizes she should save this village she was hiding out on. She had crash landed on, preventing some ultra violence happening on a young girl in the village. And it kind of sets us off on this like getting the gang together type story where Korra will rally all these warriors to help defend the village against the Empire, who will surely return in force and be mad. And be mad that she, wiped a whole garrison and whatnot. And it's like, okay, Seven Samurai, sure. Evil space empire, evil empire, you could say. Sure. Those are tropes for a reason. We like those tropes. But it's not done that well, Like, I think that probably the funniest thing to me about this whole movie was the fact that we have both Michael Huisman and Ed Skrein in the same movie sharing scenes together. Of course, that's a very meta thing to me because those are the two actors who portrayed Dario Naharis in Game of Thrones back in the day. Quite funny. Ed Skrein as the villain, as this admiral character, Atticus Noble, this right-hand man to the insurgent emperor. Pretty good as a villain. We've seen Ed Skrein be a villain before. I haven't seen him doing too much lately. It was actually kind of nice to see him. I think he's fun at shooting the scenery, and he's costumed and he's styled as like the most typical like space Nazi ever. It looks exactly like a Nazi, like brown coat, and yeah, like he's a bad guy, bad dude, and he's fine as the bad guy in all. But like a lot of the getting the gang together stuff, like we add all these characters. One of them is played by Jomon Hanchu, this disgraced general, and others are played by you have Duna Bay as the cyborg sword master, who obviously is a legend from other Korean action movies in the past. Like, that was a nice piece of casting. You have Ray Fisher, Snyder alum, as this rebel leader who they meet up with. Charlie Hunnam probably the best of all these, as Kai, this mercenary rogue character they encounter early on. None of those supporting characters get absolutely anything to do. I mean, I saw remarked upon that, like, for all the talk about Ray Fisher's role in Justice League, Zack didn't exactly give him a whole lot to do either in Rebel Moon. It's pretty amusing. All those are pretty stock characters. I think Hunnam does the best at chewing on the scenery he's given, and he just has probably the best screen presence of all of them. But I think ultimately, like, we jump so many locations in this movie, which in theory I think could be fun, but like this movie visually is such a far cry from noted not liked sci-fi movies such as Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets by Luc Besson, Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. Like, those movies look infinitely better than this. I think they're visuals that probably look cooler on paper, probably look cooler in storyboard form, but when push came to shove on the execution side of things with Rebel Moon, these places look flat. The visuals have kind of like a dustiness to them, and it's just not as engrossing as it should be. And I think for the most part, there's at least a lot of like there's like detail in some of the places, but ultimately some of these locations are a lot better than others. I made sure to write this one down specifically. When we go to the planet of King Levitica, this like cephalopod, octopusy, squid type alien figure who had been given safe passage to the rebels hiding out on this planet. When we like fly down to his world, which again we only spend like 5 minutes there, but when we fly down to his world, there's like nothing. There's like nothing to it. We're basically in blank space. There's like some floating pillars, and it's just kind of like fog, and it's like just no detail. And it's like, wow, this is clearly filmed on stagecraft technology. The volume made famous by The Mandalorian, clearly filmed in that manner, and it's almost like they forgot to put stuff on the LED screens they filmed on, because it just doesn't look like anything. It just looks like a flat strip of land. I don't know. Like, that really stood out to me. Other scenes, like I think the ending fight at the fuel depot place, that had a little bit more to it. Probably the village in the beginning is the most developed location in the movie. I guess the cantina as well. There's some funny like sci-fi like elements to this. Like, you have this alien at the cantina who's like telepathically connected to and speaking through a human like husk that he's using as his voice box. When we see Ed Skrein on his ship, he has this like octopus tentacle monster like hooking up to him and connecting to him an interesting way. At the very end, there's this technology that they can like almost like CPR or defibrillate the brain of a deceased person to like perhaps resurrect them. We see that happen in this movie. Some fun sci-fi elements, I guess you could say, but yeah, like I think it's just flat, like kind of the whole time. It's flat, it's bland, it's vanilla, and this is a script, and like I think the core conflict, the core beats, even if they were super familiar, I think this could have been a lot better. But this script is so bogged down with giving you exposition. I mean, the movie begins with Anthony Hopkins' voiceover kind of setting the stage for you, doing a data dump on what world we're entering. And it is really hard to follow because there's like so much detail to it. And we spend these moments throughout the movie where Cora speaks to Michael Huisman's character, and she basically just data dumps her backstory about who she was back in her old life with the Emperor, And it's just like, you're super bogged down, but like these are not like character developing moments. These are just like plot, like backstory drops on you. The character themselves don't have any growth. They don't really have any relationships. And the movie just doesn't have time to do that because we're spending so much time expositioning you about the past of this land. And we're also spending so much time just moving from place to place, advancing plot, because that's what we're supposed to be doing per this script. But like, we don't dwell with anything. So to me, it's just kind of flat, and you're not invested in any of the characters at the end. And yeah, I'll watch part 2. I'm gonna watch. Zack Snyder makes a movie. I'm gonna watch it to see what it's like, but it's not. There's just not a lot to this, and I'm quite disappointed with it. And frankly, I think this is one of the biggest L's on the Snyder resume, I would say, because he is someone who's been heralded as a visual storyteller, even when movies perhaps have a polarizing nature to them or feel like they're fundamentally flawed, like perhaps Sucker Punch, for example. At least he has a point of view at his visuals, but like that's not the case this time around. And frankly, I think the slow-mo action filmmaking that Snyder's done in the past, he really wears out the welcome on that with Rebel Moon. Like the action, for the most part, is not super good. And yeah, man, like he's supposed to be this visionary, and instead you get this really bland, muddled film. And I don't care if there's deleted scenes for a Snyder Cut version of this. I don't care that there's a part 2 as well. Like, Dune's getting a part 2. Dune is half of a story, and yet it's remarkable, not to mention a technical masterpiece. This is so far beyond that in a bad way. So yeah, Rebel Moon, major letdown. There's just really not a lot to dwell on with it because I just don't think there's a lot to it. So yeah, big letdown. I'm sure it'll do great on Netflix from a ratings perspective. They're going to put that in front of everyone. It'll be on that top 10. But yeah, I don't see too much to be excited about with this one, unfortunately. Big sci-fi epic, original story, original in quotes. We should celebrate that. We should want that to be happening. But it also needs to be good, and this one wasn't any good. But yeah, let me know. Did you like Rebel Moon Part 1 more than me? Let me know why. And for more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.